Welcome again to our program, Revelation of the Coming King. I'm Ranko Stefanovic, professor of New Testament at the Seventh Adventist Theological Seminary, Andrews University, and I'm so glad to be with you and be active participant in the production of this program. There is something special about the book of Revelation. It's the book of Revelation. It points to the future. It's telling us what will happen so that we are not surprised. But the purpose of the book is to make us better Christians today. You know, as I travel, I find many good Christians. They are so much obsessed about the future. But the problem with them is, you regularly conclude, they don't know how to live today. So the purpose of the book of Revelation is to point to the future, but to make us to be better people today. But much more than that, the book of Revelation always points to the past. Because it is the language of the past used to describe the future, telling us that history will repeat itself in the future. And the same God who was with his people in the past to protect them, it's also that God will be with his people in the future when that future comes to its realization. What a wonderful book, the Revelation of the coming King. I'd like to remind you one more time that once this program is over, I really like to urge you that you go and that you study the book of Revelation for yourself. You can do it alone, but it's always better to have few people, especially people who disagree with you, that you study, that you agitate, okay? That you struggle with the text, exchange the opinions. And boy, what a message will stick to your heart, and how you'll be fulfilled and filled with that strong desire to come much closer to God in your relationship with him. So this is the textbook we will use today, as well as we have done in all the previous programs. But you will always say, hey, I need something more. I need something that will really help me. How to find the keys to the symbolic language of the book of Revelation. Well, some of you have done it already. Some of you would like to provide for yourself this book titled Revelation of Jesus Christ, which is verse by verse commentary. And the entire purpose of this commentary, not to provide interpretation in yourself. You are supposed to do it, okay? But the purpose of this commentary is to give you all these Old Testament, New Testament texts, and many other backgrounds, okay, for the symbolic language of the book of Revelation, to help you as you are struggling with the text to find that interpretation based on all those tools. So, our presentation today will actually follow the pages that are here from 492. So from page 492, and let's see how far we will go today in today's program, okay? As every time, so today, we want to ask God, because in the final analysis, everything is about him. He inspired John the Revelator to write this book, and he promised to us. Do you remember Revelation 1:3? Blessed is the one who reads. In this context, this is what I am doing. I'm reading. But blessed are those who are listening. But who are actually blessed? Both you and me, if we keep the words of the prophecy of this book. And it is only God who can enable us and help us, okay, in that. So let us ask him for his presence and his help. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for a promise given to us that when we read the messages of the book of Revelation, that you will be with us and your Holy Spirit will direct us in understanding of these messages that sometimes are not easy to understand. So please be with us, Father. Give us your Holy Spirit. We would like to experience your presence in our midst. And we pray all of this in the precious name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Let's be reminded what we have been talking so far. We saw at the time of the end. Okay? As Satan will make every effort to distract us from God and try to pull out the whole world for himself and against God, okay? And as a result, that the people will receive the mark of the beast. Okay, in chapter 14 we read that God's faithful followers, they will be protected. At the same time, God is not happy that the people who are faithful to him. He would like to have more of them. So God is sending to the inhabitants of this world, he's sending his everlasting gospel. As a result of that everlasting gospel, there's some people who will make a decision to side with God. Okay? So finally, as the preaching of the gospel is concluded, there'll be two groups of people, those who are for God and those who are against God. This is the conclusion of chapter 14, described in terms of those two harvests. Okay. Once the decision of every person is concluded and made, okay, now there is something, because God wanted to show to the rebellious world the consequences of the decision that they made. Remember the expressions, knowingly and willingly. It was their decision, what they made. God wants to show them the consequences of that decision, because at the final judgment, God does not want to leave any person in doubt about the fairness of his dealing with people. Are you still with me? Yes. By the way, we will come to chapter 19, and you will see how chapter 19 begins. Once the great controversy is concluded, and the end is right there, okay, and just before that final judgment, you will see the key concept of the beginning of chapter 19 is almost an anthem that spreads throughout the universe. Yes, Lord, indeed, you are just, and you are fair, because your judgments are right. You see, everything, friends, is about the fairness of God. You who know a little bit more about the Bible, you know that actually the key issue at the beginning of the great controversy, that actually the Lucifer accused God, it was that God was not fair, that God was not just, that he did not treat, okay, his creation in the right way. But actually the purpose of the great controversy and the book of Revelation is in line with the biblical theology, is that God is indeed fair, and this is exactly what the conclusion of this world history will demonstrate. Okay, so the 7 last plagues. We saw that the purpose of the 7 last plagues, the purpose is indeed to show to the people about the consequences of their action. So that at the end time, the sinners themselves will recognize that the problem was not with God, that the problem was with them. And remember, the first 4 plagues probably are literal. Any symbolic meaning doesn't make sense. This is our current understanding that we have. Maybe in the future we will have to change our mind, but Revelation 7 suggests it clearly to us. But we saw that when we come to the 5th plague, that the literal meaning does not make too much sense. It's a symbolic there. And we saw that in the 5th plague, actually, it's the throne of the beast, the very seat of Babylon. It's visited there. And there is something that happens in the eyes of the inhabitants of the world who trusted Babylon so much that they decided to follow the beast, and they received the mark of the beast. This is exactly where we stopped last time. So please, I would like one more time to invite you to turn to Revelation chapter 16. And it says, the 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great river, the Euphrates, and its river was dried up, so that the way would be prepared for the kings from the east. Please, let's be reminded one more time. Okay, we are dealing here with a symbolic language. The symbolic language, as any other in the book of Revelation, is based on the historical reality. Keep in mind that the end-time enemy power that will be the key actor in the final crisis, it's named Babylon. And we have to keep in mind that this concept of a Babylon in the book of Revelation is rooted in the concept of the historical Babylon that is mentioned in the Old Testament. Okay, so let's put it here as, I'm repeating what we stated last time. Ancient Babylon was a square, okay, in the form of square, okay. But there was a river, Euphrates, running through the city. We mentioned last time, do you remember that? Yes. Without the river Euphrates, there would not be Babylon. Babylon owed its own existence, okay, to the river Euphrates for nourishment, for the existence, and for the survival. Okay, the enemy forces could come and surround Babylon and be there months and years they spent there. But Babylon could survive. It's because of river Euphrates. Now let's go back here to this text. This Old Testament concept about historical Babylon is very important for the understanding what's going on here with the end time Babylon. It says that the sixth plague hits the river Euphrates. In what way? It says that the waters of the Euphrates were dried up. What does it mean? Okay, let's go back to the historical Babylon. What would happen if the waters of the river Euphrates were dried up? It would mark the end of Babylon. It will be only the question how long the Babylon can last. And very soon, Babylon would come to its end. By the way, let's just wait. Very soon we'll come to that. We will see that the drying up of the river Euphrates indeed brought the end of the historical Babylon. But we want here to be in the book of Revelation first to find out if the river Euphrates is symbolic. Are you still with me? Keep in mind, we are dealing here with the symbol rooted in the historical reality. Okay, if the river Euphrates here mentioned that's rooted in the historical Babylon, the question is, what does the river Euphrates signify and stand for with reference to the end time Babylon? Praise God. These symbols should not be difficult to interpret because the book of Revelation explains it to us. These are one of the rare symbols that are very clearly identified and explained in the book of Revelation. Please, I'd like to invite you to go to the next chapter of the book of Revelation, where we have the judgment over Babylon. Let's see how the book of Revelation explains to us actually what Babylon is about. Okay, it says in Revelation 17:1, then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls, see, the same angel that executes seven last plagues, spoke with me saying, come here, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters. Please, can you help me now? What is the name of this harlot? It's Babylon. By the way, if you go in the following verses, we will come to that. You will see in verse 5, it's Babylon. Okay? So this enemy power is called Babylon. But says that Babylon sits on many waters. I don't want you to be confused. If you go to Jeremiah 51:13, you will see that Jeremiah talks about that historical Babylon, stating that Babylon was sitting on many waters. So the expression that John, the Revelator, is using in Revelation 71, that sits on many waters, actually is taken from the Old Testament, from the book of Jeremiah 51:13. Are you still with me? So let me tell you, if Jeremiah referred to Babylon as sitting on many waters, what do the many waters actually stand for in the book of Jeremiah? Is the river Euphrates. Okay? It's a different expression for the river Euphrates. So now there is a question. We did not get the answer yet. If a Babylon, according to 17:1, sits on many waters, what do many waters or the river Euphrates actually represent? It's in verse 15. The same chapter, verse 15. Praise God, this is the clear. The angel explains to John the meaning of many waters or river Euphrates.
Revelation 16 or 17?
No, Revelation 17, verse 15. In the same chapter we are. It says, and he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are the peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. I expect one hallelujah and amen. We don't need to wonder about this. Please, what does the symbol of Euphrates or many waters stand for in the book of Revelation? Let me put, I don't want simply to repeat it, but for secular and political powers of this world. Let's put it one more time. When we come to Revelation 17, we will see it. Revelation 17. Actually, Babylon, prostitute Babylon, does not sit just on the waters. It also sits on the beast, because we will see that the waters and the beast is the same reality. Two different symbols for one reality. As ancient Babylon was sitting on the river Euphrates and dependent on the river Euphrates for its existence, the end time Babylon sits on Euphrates, and what the river Euphrates or many waters are all about. It's a secular and the political power of this world that support Babylon. You see, Babylon is a religious reality. Euphrates stands for political reality. See, Babylon was located on the river Euphrates. The woman, prostitute woman, Revelation 17, which is Babylon, was sitting on the beast, which actually signified political powers. What is it telling us? That at the time of the end, we will see that the religious entities that will be actively involved in the final crisis, for their survival and for their existence, will be supported by the political and secular powers of this world. Are you still with me?
Amen.
Without those political and religious and political and secular powers in the world, the end time Babylon cannot exist. Are you still with me? It's different. We will talk about that during the medieval period. One entity, one beast, incorporated both religious and political aspect. But at the time of the end, we have two aspects with two realities, two entities. Is that the Babylon, which is a religious entity, depends on the political support of religious and political powers of this world for its existence. That's why how the mark of the beast is able to be imposed. That's why everybody who does not receive the mark of the beast had to be killed, because we have a political powers of this world are involved in that. Now, let's go back to our text in Revelation 16. Please, now I need your help and the help of the viewers there. Of course, they cannot talk to us. But try to think. It says, verse 12, that the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river, the Euphrates, and its water was dried up. What does it mean that the water of Euphrates was dried up? It means that there is something that will happen. That the political and the secular powers of this world will withdraw the popular support to Babylon. Will not support Babylon any longer. Now there is a question, why? Why suddenly with the fifth plague? Those who supported Babylon, those political and secular powers of this world, why they do not support Babylon any longer? Why not? The answer was in the fifth plague. Do you remember that? When the people of this world, they notice that actually Babylon itself is hit by the 7 last plagues, and Babylon cannot rescue and save itself. Then how can Babylon help the people in the world? Are you still with me? And will make people to think about the decision that they make. Keep in mind, they decide not to side with Babylon any longer. but it doesn't make them to side with God. Are you still with me? Actually, they become even more rebellious against God. Read the 7 last plagues. The more severe 7 plagues are, make them to regret and to suffer, but doesn't make them to come back to God. Actually makes them to blaspheme more against God. It's very interesting. It's when Satan messes up in this world, people do not blame Satan. People blame always God. But we have to understand something about this drying up of the river Euphrates. It says to prepare the way for the kings from the east. Oh, friends, we can have here a very, very long discussion now. There are so many elements here, please. I would like to encourage you that, as I mentioned, once this program is over, to study, because you have all informations here. But let me just provide here to you the framework, because the first century Christians did not have a problem to understand what was going on here in the book of Revelation in the light of what happened to the historical Babylon. By the way, Babylon was in the peak of its power. The king Nebuchadnezzar, who repented, you remember that? Repented, and finally he was accepted by God. He died. After him, there are 3 other kings. And there was finally the 4th king. But he decided to leave Babylon. And he left his son, Belshazzar, there in Babylon, to rule instead of him. You are now familiar. We are referring to the book of Daniel. However, at that time, Medo-Persians, they came, they surrounded the city, holding the city under the siege for a long time. But why would Babylon surrender? Babylon is surrounded by the triple wall. There is river Euphrates providing so much water there. They can live there for many, many years without any fear. Nobody can harm them. And now there is something that happened. I would like to invite you to turn to the book of Isaiah, chapter 41. Isaiah chapter 41. There is one name that is very prominent here with regard to ancient Babylon and the prophecies of Isaiah about Babylon. It's chapter 45:1, where it says, "Thus says the Lord to Cyrus, his anointed, whom I have taken by the right hand to subdue nations before him and to loose the loins of the king." Verse 4, "For the sake of Jacob my servant and Israel my chosen one, I have also called you by name. I have given you a title of honor, though you have not known me." Verse 5, "I'm the Lord, there is no other beside me, there is no other God." What is the key name here mentioned by Isaiah? Is the King Cyrus. The King Cyrus was actually the commander of chief of the Medo-Persian army that surrendered Babylon. Okay. Actually, this ancient king, pagan king, he had nothing to do with God. Okay? Actually, it's called in the book of Isaiah, "my anointed one." Do you know what Hebrew word stands here for "my anointed one"? Is the word the Messiah. Mm-hmm. Actually, the King Cyrus, he stands as the prototype of the Messiah, pagan king. Why? Because he was the one, according to the prophecy of Isaiah, the one who was supposed to destroy Babylon. And somehow he functions here as a prototype of the real Messiah who will one day come and to destroy the end-time Babylon. Are you still with me? But in order to understand how the end-time Babylon will be destroyed, we have to understand how ancient Babylon was destroyed by Cyrus. In the same way, because Cyrus stands as a prototype for the Messiah. How he will destroy it? I would like you just to look in the 2 texts that come before chapter 25. It's verse 27 and 28. Chapter 44 of the book of Isaiah, okay? Chapter 44 of the book of Isaiah, verses 27, 28. "It is I who say to the depth of the sea, be dried up, and I will make your rivers dry." Are you still with me? I will make your rivers dry. "It is I who say to Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and he will perform all my desire. And he declares to Jerusalem, she will be built, and of the temple your foundation will be laid. The book of Isaiah points here that Cyrus will destroy Babylon. How will he destroy Babylon? By drying up the river. By the way, we don't have the historical records too much about what happened to the ancient Babylon. The only record that we find in the Bible, it's in the book of Daniel. Do you remember that? It's in chapter 5, telling us that that night when the king Belshazzar was celebrating probably the anniversary of Babylon, but at the same time blaspheming against the God of Israel, he brought those vessels from the temple. Do you remember that? What were they doing? They're drinking from those vessels, shouting to the Jews, who is your God? You see, your holy vessels are here. We are drinking from them wine and celebrating our gods because they're more powerful. And the Bible said that that night, Belshazzar was killed, and the Persians took over the city. Are you still with me? We don't know what happened. But in the first century, the people in the Roman Empire, they understood only one way how Babylon was destroyed. Because the two Greek historians, I have the quotations there in my commentary, you can read for them. One was Herodotus, another one was Xenophon, two of them. They are providing more information, and they're saying us that Cyrus, with the Medo-Persian army, he realized that he couldn't conquer Babylon. And he took his counselors. They were talking together. What shall we do? Shall we give up? And finally the idea came. There was here a huge valley. They say, why don't we dig a canal here? And divert the riverbed and the flow of the water into this valley. And according to those historians, this is indeed what they happened. And the night when the king Belshazzar was celebrating his victory, they prevented the flow of the river here. They diverted the water here into this valley. And that night they went this way. They marched there into the city. Of course, there are walls here. And they were able to bribe the gatekeepers there. And that night when Belshazzar, who was not loved by the people in Babylon at all, that's why they opened the door to the Medo-Persians, entered there, King Belshazzar, and they occupied Babylon. For a long time, I even see today that some scholars are laughing in this report. They said it's just a product of imagination. But it was a number of years ago, in ancient Babylon, territory ancient Babylon, Cyrus, so-called Cyrus cylinder was discovered, in which Cyrus celebrates and praises all the victory that he has done. And there is one sentence he said, and my forces, actually it's not my forces, it's so much ego in those people. He said, and I conquered Babylon without losing a single soldier. It fits very nicely. Whether this is true or not, but because of these two Greek historians, this is what people knew in the first century about the fall of Babylon. So when the Revelator, John the Revelator, saw in the vision that the river Euphrates dried up, and when he put it here in the book of Revelation, people did not have any difficulty to understand what was actually going on. As the ancient Babylon fell, because of the drying up of the river Euphrates, the prophecy of the book of Revelation is that the same will happen to the end time Babylon. But keep in mind that this time we are dealing with a symbol. Because river Euphrates, many waters, they stand for political and secular powers of this world who will somehow withdraw their popular support to Babylon, and it will cause the fall of Babylon. Are you still with me? Amen. For which purpose? It says, to prepare, so that the way would be prepared, verse 12, for the kings from the east. Let's go back to ancient Babylon. You see, you have to locate the map. This is Babylon. Where is the east? It's here. Medo-Persia is in the east. So who are the kings from the east? Keep in mind, we are dealing with Media and Persia. different kings there. Okay, this expression is taken from ancient Babylon. But who are those? Who are the kings from the east in the New Testament here in the book of Revelation? Of course, number one, Jesus Christ is the king. When you read in Gospel of Matthew chapter 24, Jesus will come from the east. He will come from the sunrise, because the east in the Bible, it's always the point from which Jesus will come, is the place where God dwells. Do you remember Revelation chapter 7? The sealing of God's people is done by the angel who came from the east. It's always the east there. But why the plural kings? Friends, there is only one explanation, is because at the time of the end, we have two military sides. Those who belong to Satan, those who are with the beast, those religious, political, and secular powers of this world. But on another side, we have Jesus Christ, and we have his faithful people. Please let me remind you, Revelation 1:6, 5:10, God's people in the book of Revelation are mentioned as the royal priesthood, as the kings who are sitting on the throne, and Jesus Christ promised to them, everybody who overcomes will sit with me on my throne. How do you call people who are sitting on the throne? You call them kings. By the way, I'd like you to turn with me, okay, the Revelation 17. It's verse 14. Please keep in mind all these chapters are talking about the battle of Armageddon, so we have somehow to jump to some of those verses. It says, "These will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he's the Lord of lords and King of kings." If Jesus is the King of kings, who are those kings? It says, "And those who with him are called and chosen and faithful." And when you have in the book of Revelation, those who are called, chosen, faithful, who are they? They are not angels. Angels are not chosen, they're there. It's the faithful people of God. Amen. Okay, so we are dealing here with two parties. Let me now ask you, why the destruction of Babylon? You see, usually people are just talking about the judgment, but judgment always has the purpose. The destruction of ancient Babylon happened so to make possible for the people of Israel to go back to their land there and to rebuild Jerusalem. Why the fall of the end time Babylon? In order to provide the redemption, salvation for God's people. Amen. This is actually what we are talking about. Now, the flow of the book of Revelation is very unclear, but I'd like to suggest all of you and our viewers, for more detailed description of these events, I'd like to suggest to you to go to the last 3 chapters of the book written by Ellen White, titled The Great Controversy. It's one of the best description that interpret this text that is found here in the book of Revelation. But please, I simply want to follow here as the text is. So the people will become disillusioned. They don't want to support Babylon any longer. At that moment, there is one of the greatest deception that ever happens in the history of this world that will happen at the time of the end. Let's keep on reading from verse 13. It says, and I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. How do we call them? The counterfeit trinity, you remember that? What is another name for them? Babylon, okay? So you see, Babylon does not surrender. There's no river Euphrates to support Babylon any longer, but Babylon wants to survive. So now we have out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs. For they are spirits of demons, performing signs which go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them together for the war of the great day of God the Almighty. Let's skip verse 15. And they gather them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Are you confused here? And I know wherever I go, People like to know something about these 3 frogs. And boy, and I hear so many different interpretations. Some are very, very interesting. Yes. And if you ask me, I'm struggling with understanding of these frogs. But if I go to the Old Testament, it seems to me that things become much, much clearer. In order to try to explain every detail of the symbol, we want to find out what is the general picture of that. And there is something is that at the moment when the river Euphrates it does not support Babylon any longer, out of Babylon comes the greatest deception. And what is deception? This deception is portrayed here in terms of the 3 unclean spirit-like frogs. It says that these frogs are the spirit of demons. Keep in mind, what else? Performing signs. What are the signs? Miracles. Keep in mind, we are dealing with a great deception. Do you remember we talk about miracles that will happen at the time of the end? There is the greatest deception. That perception is so persuasive, inviting the kings of the whole world to gather them together for the war of the great day of God Almighty. What is the name of this war? Because of the place of that war, Armageddon, we call this battle the Battle of Armageddon. Are you still with me? But we did not get the answer yet. What is this deception all about? What are these frogs? Evidently, these 3 frogs is the symbolic expression for these 3 demons. Are you still with me? But does it come as a surprise to you? Every time in the book of Revelation, when demons are mentioned, they're always demons. Never symbolic language is used for them. Are you still with me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is the only exception in the book of Revelation where they are not just demons, they are symbolized by frogs. Why frogs? Oh boy, when I go to different Bible commentaries, people have such great imagination to describe, frogs. And, friends, that's not the issue. When we find the symbol of the book of Revelation, what is the first step that we are supposed to make? Let's go to the Old Testament. So now, I want that you see that you can study the book of Revelation for yourself. Where in the Bible we have a plagues, where water turns into blood, when people become hungry, when the sun scorches the people, when there is such dense darkness, and also part of those plagues are frogs. Where do you have it? You see that? Friends, you don't need to have a PhD to understand the book of Revelation. Just go to the Old Testament. Actually, yeah, you are completely right. We're talking about the plagues of Egypt that happened at the exodus of the people of Israel. Please, I'd like you now to be with me, because there is something very interesting is that you can observe as we are studying all these plagues. Are you with me? Yes. Do you remember? Moses comes before Pharaoh and says to him, if you don't obey God, this is the plague that will come upon Egypt. And Pharaoh said, no, I don't want to obey God. That's okay. Moses lifts up his stick there, you remember that? And the plague came. But at the same time, there is something that happened. The Egyptian magicians, they counterfeit the same thing, the same plague. And Pharaoh said, yeah, good trick, Moses, but you're nothing better than my magicians. People suffer. And then Pharaoh realizes these are the fingers of God. So he has prayed to God. Okay, of course, the plague is removed. Pharaoh is again unbeliever. And Moses said, another plague will come. And Pharaoh does not believe it. Another plague hit the land. What happens? The magicians, they do the same thing. And Pharaoh says, another good trick. And it happened how many times? Several times, okay. I'm not sure now. Is it 3 or 4 times? It happens. And then finally Moses said before Pharaoh, and he said, there will be another plague. What plagues? There will be frogs. Pharaoh said, oh, good attempt. Where can you find? Of course, locusts, they can't come, okay? But frogs. And frogs, they filled the earth. But the problem was that magicians, they did the same. And Pharaoh said, I don't understand how it happened. So many frogs. But you see, it's another trick that my magicians, they can do. Friends, in Egyptian plagues, the frogs were the last deception and last counterfeit that Pharaoh's magicians were able to do. Because after that, another plague come. And Pharaoh looked into his magicians. They tried to do all those things. Nothing happened. Finally, those magicians, they came to Pharaoh and says, we cannot do anything. This is the finger of God. Our best understanding that we can reach with regard to these frogs at this moment is that actually the inspiration wants to tell us that with this deception of these three unclean spirits symbolized by frogs, this is the last greatest deception that Satan will be able to do, that Babylon will be able to perform before the second coming of Christ. How successful will be this deception? Please, read in verse 16. Say, they gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Evidently, the entire world falls into that deception. By the way, in the great controversy, I like what Ellen White saw there in the vision is. She says, at that time, when people will not trust Babylon any longer, it is Satan himself who will step on the scene, imitating the second coming of Christ, performing different miracles around, and people will come to him, pleading for help, and he will tell them, yeah, you suffer because of these plagues, but these plagues are not because I wanted them to put you. They're caused by the people who did not want to side with us and to support this system. Friends, this is what the Battle of Armageddon is all about. I'd like now to invite you to turn here to this verse 16, because among the Christians, the concept of the Battle of Armageddon is one of the most problematic concepts. And here, one more time, I want to remind you here in my commentary, if you go from page 493 to page going all to 497 in that small print, you have in detail, you have so many informations that you really need a lot of time to go through each one of these details. But I want to give to you a broad picture of that, what you can study for yourself and try to find in the details. Because many good Christians today, they believe that there is some hidden place known Armageddon. And they try to establish where that place is built. So most Christians, they believe that Armageddon is actually Palestine. When political leaders of this world will meet between the south or north or east and the west, based on the book of Daniel, people have different interpretations, where actually we will have the military conflict there in Middle East because of the situation in Jerusalem. Friends, you have to understand that the book of Revelation never supports such idea. You see, friends, the book of Revelation is not about the military invasion in Palestine. It's not a battle because of oil. Mm-hmm. God does not care about oil. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he cares. He would like us that we can drive a car. Without that oil, I would not be able to come here to have this seminar. But keep in mind that the primary concern of the book of Revelation is the conclusion of the plan of salvation, and salvation people to have them one day in God's kingdom. Amen. Now, there is the question, then what is Armageddon? By the way, the word Armageddon that we have here, which is rightly, in King James Bible we have Armageddon because of the Septuagint that drops that sign. So instead of Har, we have R. Okay, doesn't matter. The concept is it. The question is, what is it? By the way, you will notice here that John the Revelator makes very clear. He said that all the people will be gathered together, and that the place of the final battle is called in Hebrew Armageddon. Did you notice it? So he wants to tell us, don't look for a literal place. You have to understand Hebrew in order to understand what this name means. And in Hebrew, Har or Hor means a mountain. And Armageddon occurs in the Old Testament a number of times. Actually, which is one of the variant names for the ancient city Megiddo. Let me explain to you here something. If you have any study Bible, at the end of the Bible you have the map. You can go there and see for yourself. I just want to remind you how Palestine looks like. Okay, you have the shore, here's the Mediterranean Sea, okay? Or the Great Sea according to the Bible. So Palestine, this is the territory, River Jordan, okay? River Jordan. Where are the Babylonians and the Persians and the Assyrians and all nations? You see, they are here. They're here. But you will notice that in the Bible, that the enemy powers who come against Israel, they never come from the east to invade Palestine. They always go around, and the invasion is done from the north. Now there is a question why. Because we have here that huge Arabic wilderness. And any attempt for a huge army to travel this territory would mean really a suicide. No water, not food and anything. So all the enemies of God's people who would invade Palestine, they would go here and invade from the north. But then there is something that you have to understand. This is the mountain area. It's almost impossible to enter here, this territory. There are only two places that you can invade Palestine. To go here down the river Jordan, which was very, very hard for military to enter. But there was here, through this mountain ridge, there was a safe path to go here. And usually, the roads here made for merchants and travelers here, and the army would go this path. Therefore, even before the Israelites came to Palestine, there was here a fortress that was located. If you go to the Bible, this is known as the Jezreel Valley. This is Galilee, okay? Jezreel Valley here is. They established a fortress. The name of that fortress was Megiddo, from ancient time, ancient Canaanites. When the people of Israel occupied Palestine, they fortified this fortress. And we have in the time of Solomon, the Solomon here had many horses. He put many soldiers here. Why? When the enemies attack Palestine, if you're able to prevent them here, then Palestine is free. Are you still with me? If those enemy forces are able to defeat the Israelites here, what happens? The way is open to occupy Palestine. By the way, in the history of the Jewish people, Megiddo was the place of the most famous and even notorious battles that God's people ever waged against their enemies. Let me just remind you, that was the place where Barak and Deborah, do you remember, fought against their enemies. I can say more because of the time. I try to shorten it. Actually, this is the place where the young king Josiah was killed. And by the way, if you read chapter 12 of the book of Zechariah, in the book of Zechariah, because what happened to the king of Josiah here at Megiddo, actually Megiddo became the prophecies of Zechariah and other prophetic books, a symbol of the place of the final battle between God and his people and their enemies. So in the history of the Israelite people, Megiddo was the place of those famous battles and became a symbol of that final eschatological battle that God will lead on behalf of his people. But let me tell you something else. Megiddo was not just the place of those great battles. It was actually the place known where God so many times intervened in a miraculous way on behalf of his people. But now, there is one problem and I struggled with that problem about 15 years ago. As I was a student of the book of Revelation, people asked me to lecture on the book of Revelation, but there was one problem that I confronted. I heard from other people the answer, I did not believe it. The problem is, when you come here to Megiddo, this is the plain, Jezreel plain. Here, so many people were killed in battles. Are you still with me? But there is no mountain. But here you talk about the Mount of Megiddo. And I will never forget. It was exactly 17 years ago. I was with Dr. John Pauline and with 30 students, 70 students from the theological seminary. We were there at Megiddo. And students came to me, they said, because I lectured to them the book of Revelation, they said, where is the Mount of Megiddo? This was for the first time I was in Israel. I was completely lost. I said, I don't know. The problem is Megiddo is on the elevated position. Why? Because Megiddo was so many times destroyed. And on the ruins of the previous city, a new city was built. Are you still with me? And always, so, but this is not mountain. And I will never forget. A tourist guy, lady, she came. She actually was working her PhD in ancient antiquity. She was very much familiar with history. And she came to me and she did like this. And she started laughing. She said, I know what you are talking about. I said, what are we talking about? She said, like every Christian who comes here. I said, what? Everybody asking, where is the Mount of Megiddo? I said, do you have the answer? She said, do you see there? I said, yes. It's so clear you can see it. She said, this is the Mount of Megiddo. And something clicked to me. Ah, yeah. I grew up in a small town in Bosnia, in former Yugoslavia there. And we have a mountain about 20 miles far away from our town. And everybody knows that that mountain belonged to our city. The problem is you just look at the mountain that is in the city. No, friends. So it was about 15, 20 miles far away, that mountain. It's clear, it's a huge mountain. I said, so? She said, do you know the name of that mountain, which is Mount of Megiddo? I said, no. She said, this is the Mount of Carmel. And then suddenly, everything becomes clear. Amen. It was actually that event changed my preaching. I was last year there. I will be in a few months again there. And I showed to the students, by the way, last year when we were there, I lectured my students about Megiddo there on the site of the Megiddo, showed them Mount Carmel. And the tourist guide lady came, again, she has a PhD in the Old Testament. And she said, yeah, you are right. This is the Mount of Megiddo, the Mount of Carmel. Now everything becomes now clear what the Battle of Armageddon is all about. Amen. The Battle of Armageddon is very similar to the event that happened somewhere in the past in the Old Testament. When the prophet Elijah, you remember that? According to the 1 King chapter 17 and 18, when the prophet Elijah had to confront the king of Ahab and all those Baal's prophets, when he stood in front of the whole people and confronted them with one question, with one decision, is if God is God, then follow him. If a Baal is God, then follow him. It was at that time that God manifested his power in front of all the people of Israel and showed his glory. You remember that? And the fire came down from heaven and devoured those sacrifices. There is something very interesting. If you remember that we talked, that one of the greatest deception that the counterfeit Trinity will do, bring the fire down from heaven, actually to imitate the Elijah event on the Mount of Carmel. Satan is always trying to prevent the plan of God. And friends, this is just to stimulate your appetite for studying of this subject. Just to show it to you that actually the Battle of Armageddon is not a political event, is not a military action, is not a military war because of oil or Palestine or a confrontation between the Jews and Palestine. Actually, the Battle of Armageddon is battle for the mind of the people. When God, whom the world rejected completely, at a certain point of history, he will have a manifest himself and to show the people about the decision that they failed to make. And that a crucial decision actually that they made actually is by rejecting God and siding with the wrong side. This is actually what the Battle of Armageddon is all about. By the way, In our next section, we will see a little bit the outcome of this battle of Armageddon. But you don't need to go too far, because this is exactly what the seventh plague is all about. Do you have the text there, etc.? You will see the outcome of the battle of Armageddon. It says, then the seventh angel poured out his bowl upon the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne, saying, it is done. And there flashes and lightning and sounds and peals of thunder. And there was a great earthquake, such as there had not been since man came to be upon the earth. So great an earthquake it was, and so mighty. And the great city was split into 3 parts. And the cities of the nations fell, and Babylon great was remembered before God, to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce wrath. Please, can you now help me? What is the significance of this? That outcome of the battle of Armageddon refers to the fall of Babylon, but says that Babylon was split into 3 parts. Why the fall of Babylon is portrayed in terms of splitting into 3 parts? Why? Because remember, Babylon is made of 3 parts. It means that the outcome of the battle of Armageddon will be total destruction of the counterfeit Trinity.
Amen.
We will see it in chapter 19, where we have the conclusion of the battle of Armageddon, that the first beast and the second beast will be destroyed in that lake of fire before the second coming of Christ. But there is only one entity that will be left, is the dragon, is the Satan himself, actually who will receive the right judgment after the second coming of Christ and after the millennium. Friends, there is one beautiful message that is given here and inserted here in the midst of the description of the preparation for the battle of Armageddon. I don't want to tell you what that message is all about. I would like with that message to begin our next presentations. So I hope you will come and join us for our next study of the Bible, because God wants to reveal to us what will happen in the future.